Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin and I'm the author of Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. Available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible books. And if you are watching this video on October 30th, 2019 or October 31st, 2019, you can download a free Kindle copy of my book, Enlightened Medicine, Your Power to Get Well Now. It's an integrative approach to healing the 7 deadly lifestyle diseases. Look how thick the book is, but you can download it on Kindle for free. You can also get it on Audible books. It's on integrative medicine and how to heal naturally or integrate Western and Eastern or alternative healing modalities. So if you are new to my channel, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel below. I do Ayurvedic consultations, lifestyle consultations, coaching as well. Today we are going to talk about why you can't love your alcoholic into sobriety. This is a biggie, you guys. This is a big one. Whether or not your alcoholic is your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, sister, brother, best friend, mom, dad, adult children, whomever they are, you can never give them enough love to love them into sobriety. Believe me, I know. I tried that tactic for almost 6 years with my alcoholic loved one. So for those of you who don't know me and don't know my story, so first of all, if you have subscribed to my channel, there is an entire playlist dedicated to alcoholism, recovery, and loving an alcoholic loved one. I think I have something around 49 videos, all dealing with that topic, as well as the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon 12-step study. And it's especially great if you are new to recovery groups and you haven't really attended AA or Al-Anon or whatever your situation might be. So my background is I was in a relationship with an alcoholic, a romantic relationship with an alcoholic for almost 6 years, a romantic partnership. He tried to get sober. He went through different recovery programs. He, as of the last time I know, he had still been struggling with staying sober. So I made the decision several times, but of course I made the decision that I needed to separate myself from the situation in order for him to get help for himself and just, make sure he has his addiction under control. But I learned a lot through the relationship, did a lot of research, wrote this book, interviewed a lot of alcoholics, spent about 200 hours in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and NA meetings and Al-Anon meetings, and also, I volunteered in a rehab center for a year teaching yoga because I really wanted to understand the disease itself and addiction in general, but most of all alcoholism as the primary addiction and drug addiction as a secondary addiction. I really strove to understand that because I really felt like if I understood it, then I could understand him better. And that was really the impetus for all of the research and studying that I did about alcoholism. I know that when you are in a relationship with an alcoholic, it can be really super duper difficult because it seems like whatever you do doesn't make a lot of difference in your alcoholic's behavior for the good or the bad. It just seems like they are doing what they're doing no matter what. However, I really believe that every single person who loves an alcoholic and who is in a relationship with an alcoholic, no matter what that relationship looks like, we all go through these phases. It's like these waves, these up and downs, where we really are believing that our behavior, especially if you're the main influencer on the alcoholic, if you are their main person, their go-to person, that what you do or what you don't do will make a huge impact and difference on their drinking. And let me tell you right now that nothing could be further from the truth. Whatever you do, however much you love them, makes absolutely no difference whatsoever on their drinking. It really doesn't. Now, let me just tell you this. Loving them makes you a good, loving person because loving your alcoholic does not define them. It defines you as a person. Now, inversely, if you express hatred or despise toward your alcoholic loved one, again, that does not define the alcoholic person, that defines you. and what you have inside of you. So just know that. And so part of my story is I tried years and years and years and years to be the best, most loving person I could possibly be. And I really studied spirituality, went deep into the scriptures, and just unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, loving, lovey-dovey, showering him with compliments, showering him with praise, showering him with help. And let me tell you this, that all it did in that case was make me more and more frustrated, because I felt like love was his way out of his addiction. Because for him, and for a whole lot of alcoholics, they don't have the love that they need growing up. I mean, that isn't the case in all of them. Everybody's story is so vastly different. So in this book, I interviewed 10 alcoholics, and their stories are in here interspersed in different topics. But some alcoholics that I interviewed grew up in pretty functional households, meaning mom and dad, both, one parent had a job or both had jobs, but relatively good income levels, so they weren't living in the streets. There was food on the table every single day, 3 times a day. They had clothing, they had family. For the most part, for a few of them, not all of them, just a few of them, they had pretty functional households. It's just that this disease of alcoholism does not discriminate. It does not discriminate if you are rich or poor, if you're black or white, if you are very skinny, very fat, tall, short, male, female, child, adult. It doesn't matter. It discriminates against nothing and no one. And therefore, it can be really hard to justify for some people in some categories, such as if you grew up in a very loving home with really supportive parents and median household income with good school systems. It's really hard for us to say, oh yeah, I understand why this person became an alcoholic, because you truly don't understand why they became an alcoholic. So it can be really tough. But in my alcoholic's case, he grew up in a very, very dysfunctional alcoholic home for all intents and purposes, where there was a lot of alcoholism going around, not only in his life, but with siblings and grandparents and a parent. And there was a lot of alcoholism going all around, a lot of emotional abuse, some physical abuse. There was a lot. For my person in my life who is an alcoholic, there was love, but it was a really conditional and very dysfunctional type of love. Therefore, I came in as the heroine saying, oh, I will love him to sobriety. That will be my plan. Now, granted, in the beginning, I had no idea he was an alcoholic. I had no clue. I wouldn't have chosen that path. But it was slowly through the connection that I figured it out. And I was already really deep into the relationship at that point. And it was at that point that I tried to save him. You might know exactly what I'm talking about. You may have tried at several attempts to save your alcoholic loved one. And you may still be trying to save them, because it's weird. Alcoholism is a brain disease, and that brain disease affects the alcoholic, and it also affects the family members and friends or loved ones. So it's just a weird brain disease that plays tricks on you even while you are loving the alcoholic. Because for you being the person who loves the alcoholic, your mind tries to find logical reasons out of the disease. And it's not a logical disease. It's a very chaotic disease, because it being a brain disease is only one facet of what it is. So if you read my book, and if you've seen some of my other videos or seen other videos on alcoholism, it's a brain disease, but it's also a chemical disease, because those that are alcoholics are actually chemically dependent. Their bodies are actually physically, chemically dependent on the alcohol or drug or both. It is an emotional disease. Therefore, there's this never-ending round of emotions, kind of like on a hamster wheel. They keep perpetuating themselves and going around. It is a psychological disease, therefore the brain disorder piece of it, that it is literally, it functions like a mental disease. And it's a disease of relationship. Therefore, the way they relate to people is very dysfunctional, and it's a very strange way of relating. And that's how you actually get sucked into the brain disease piece of it. Because your mind starts playing tricks on you, because your mind is like trying to logically think through the person's path towards sobriety, and that's not the way their body is functioning because of the multifaceted piece of the disease itself. While your brain may very well be saying to you, okay, my alcoholic had an abusive mother or father, or they had an abusive husband or wife before me, or they were abducted as a child, or they had a lot of bullies at school growing up. So your mind is constantly trying to justify like the missing piece, the piece that needs to be put back into place in order for them to stop drinking. And while that may be one piece, in fact, it's not the entire story. It's not the entire story, because when your body is physically and chemically dependent on something, it's not the logical aspect of it, or healing the emotional piece, or healing the psychological piece, that's actually going to heal the disease itself, if that makes sense. Just think of, for example, let's say you haven't had food or water for several days. You were stranded, stuck in the desert, whatever. But you haven't had food or water in several days. And of course, for us being human, water is the first necessity, right? Food comes after, water comes first. Let's just suppose that you were really, really, really thirsty. You hadn't had water in a day. Let's even say a day. You haven't had water in a day, or anything to drink in a day. Your body is about to shut down because it needs water. Now, if somebody says to you, here's a glass of water, or here's a hug and kiss and some affection, which one are you going to choose? You tell me. You're probably going to go for the water first, right? That is what you're going to go for, because your body is so incredibly deprived of that actual necessary and vital thing you need to live, versus the love and affection, which is going to come later. That is why I say that it's the same thing for an alcoholic. They're going to pick the alcohol each and every time, because their body is so incredibly chemically dependent on that alcohol that any amount of love or affection is not going to override that. It's just not happening. There's no way that can happen. Now, they might be very appreciative of your love, and they should be, obviously, right? And they might be really appreciative of the fact that you may be giving them the love that they never received as a child or young adult, or maybe you don't abuse them, such as, other relationships may have. But it's the same thing, that love that you can give them cannot compare to the magnitude of the disease that they're actually dealing with. And again, I say this in a few videos, and I say this because there's still a lot of skepticism. And it usually comes, honestly, you guys, it usually comes from a lack of education about what alcoholism is, and also not spending enough time with alcoholics in full-blown alcoholism in a distanced way. A distanced way meaning, like, you right now with your alcoholic loved one are way too close to the situation to be able to realize a lot of things. But in a distanced way, meaning knowing other alcoholics that are outside of your family and friends circle. And also seeing and hearing alcoholics in recovery that are in all stages of recovery, whether they've been 1 day sober, 10 days sober, 30 days sober, 5 years sober, 10 years sober, 20 years sober. So you really need to see the disease from all ends of the spectrum to really get the gist of what it is. And so if you're sitting there still really skeptical, going, well, like, I don't even believe this thing is a disease, it's just a behavioral thing. If they would just change their behavior and change their mind, they would be able to get out of this. And I will tell you right now, after having spent so much time with so many addicts, it is not that easy. It's just not. And another thing is, no one person would ever choose this. They would never, ever choose this. If they could do their whole life over again, they would choose a different body. Seriously, that it's just no person. Now, some alcoholics in hardcore recovery, I'm talking hardcore, meaning like they've been sober 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and they've learned their lessons and they've integrated their lessons through recovery because it was such a hard process for them to recover. Many of them will say to you, no, I don't regret it. I don't regret those days because in those days, I was a certain person, but through recovery, I have been able to become an entirely different person because I have overcome some of the greatest obstacles in my life. And for me, that's a great triumph to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm sure, just like anything, right? Any of life's major lessons, and when you overcome obstacles, there's really great rewards that lie on the other side of the wall, but you really can't see that until you're there. So while alcoholics and addicts are in the midst of their disease, of course they're going to say, like, I would have never chose this. They wouldn't have chose it. There's no way they would have chose it. They don't understand it. They don't understand the magnitude and the multitude of what the disease actually is. So, and that's why it's such a hard disease to treat, by the way. Just so you guys know, it still baffles medical professionals and even behavioral specialists. Like, it still baffles them because it's such a mutable disease. It's really hard to treat because it's on so many levels. If it was just physical, easy. You invent a pill, right? If it's just psychological, easy. You do therapy, right? If it was just relational, easy. You put them in prisons, right? So it's just like there would be easy fixes, but there is no easy fix because it's so many things. It's not just one thing. It's a spiritual disease too, which I haven't even mentioned. So the other thing that I really, if you are a woman or a man who is in a romantic partnership with an alcoholic, here's one thing I really want to pound home today. I really want you guys to get this. Please, please get this. What I want you to get, so I said you cannot love your alcoholic into recovery, right? The second thing, if you are in a romantic partnership with your alcoholic, what I want you to know is that you cannot be pretty enough or handsome enough or skinny enough or buff enough to drive your alcoholic to be sober, okay? Just know that. It has absolutely, positively nothing to do with you. Absolutely nothing. It has nothing to do with you. And that was one of the hardest things that I had to get over personally, because the one thing about alcoholism is that, and my alcoholic, honestly, he never cheated on me. Now, never cheated physically, ever, never, never, never. Did he cheat emotionally? Yes, of course he did. And so in the midst of some of his sobriety, like, we did have conversations along these lines. And I said, well, you never physically cheated, but you emotionally cheated, meaning that because being in a relationship with an alcoholic creates a lot of tension, and then it creates this codependency where it's sort of like you're chasing after them, trying to get them to be sober by doing many different things, a lot of them bad and a lot of them manipulative, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Lying to them, pouring out the drinks, hiding the alcohol, like throwing out the pills, like deceiving them about what time you have to be at a place because you want to make sure they're not drinking, so you're going to get there in advance. Like, there's all kinds of tricks that you've done to try to circumvent this relationship. So the reason that I told him that he was emotionally cheating was because he would get really frustrated because of all the manipulative things that I was doing on the other hand, just to try to get him sober. And he would complain, but who would he complain to? Other women, right? So he'd be in a bar, he'd be at the restaurant, he was a bartender, so he had a lot of women at the bar in this really high-end place. He was living with roommates, so he'd have women come over that were friends of the roommates, and, oh, my girlfriend this, my girlfriend that, like, and of course the women are going to be sympathetic to his cause because, you know, he's a good-looking guy. Alcoholics are really, really, really good at talking usually. They're good at, like, getting people to sympathize with them. So when I say that he emotionally cheated, it just means that he wasn't emotionally faithful. He wasn't loyal. He wasn't trustworthy in that sense, that he was not emotionally committed to the actual relationship. So I went through a lot with, like, oh my God, maybe I'm not pretty enough. Maybe my body isn't good enough. Maybe I need to get rid of a little more fat. Like, I really went through the gamut of if only I lose 5 more pounds, he'll stop drinking. Or if only I do my hair better or do my nails, he'll stop drinking. You know, so it was this crazy spinning of, it's something I need to do in order to get him to stop drinking and get him more committed and faithful to the relationship. So that is another thing. Don't fall into that trap because it's not true. It's totally not true. It's such a crazy disease. Now, let me tell you this. So finally, you can't love them enough. And that includes not doing things for them enough as well. So it means that in a normal love relationship, or just any relationship really, right? When you love and care about the person, you're going to do things for them, right? You might like come over and help them do the dishes or cook a meal together, or take them to the store if they can't drive. Like if it's your grandmother or something like that, she got her license taken away, she can't really see through the glaucoma. And you take your grandmother to the grocery store to get her groceries and just things like that. When we love people, we do things to help them because those are gestures. But here's the thing with an alcoholic loved one is like, part of loving them is actually not doing that stuff. You can't do that stuff with an alcoholic because that is enabling them to drink more, because they really take advantage of the I can't do this or that because of A, B, or C reasons. And there's always a reason. There's always an excuse and there's always a reason. So actually loving them to the fullest extent of loving them is actually not helping them. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that's actually the way it goes. Now, let me say this in the final statement. At the same time that you can't love an alcoholic into sobriety, you cannot hate them into sobriety, okay? I'm going to say this in all sincerity. Nobody hates the alcoholic more than himself or herself. No one. No one. They hate themselves more than you could ever hate them. They have more shame, more guilt. They have lower self-esteem. They have a lower sense of self-worth than anybody could ever provide for them. So just know that even if they pretend that they are the king of the hill, the king of the world, or the queen of the hill, or the queen of the world, that is not the way they feel inside. And I will tell you this, every single solitary alcoholic that I talked to, spoke to, interviewed, told me the exact same thing. 100% across the board. So if you think you're going to be clever by reversing it, do not do that. Be the best version of who you can be the most loving person that you can be, but don't spread around more self-loathing for them. It's not worth it. And the best course of action is really, if you can't extend that love, if you're tired of extending that love toward your alcoholic loved one, then the best thing you can do is just stay away. Honestly, just stay out of their lives, stay away, love them from afar, send them blessings from afar. But really, if you can't give full love freely, then just don't give anything at all. Just stay away, because they need to figure out their own lives and their path to their own sobriety. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Share this video with other friends and family of alcoholics, whoever you think might deserve and need this help. And thank you so much for supporting my channel. So you can always buy a book or 2 or 3, spread the love around, give it to family members. And you can also pledge your support on Patreon, www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin. And I will see you in the next video.